So how are you supposed to co-parent when you're in quarantine? I'm Karen Covey. I'm a divorce advisor, attorney, mediator, and a coach. And today, I want us to talk about the situation that we're all living, which is dealing with co-parenting while we're in the same house with our kids 24/7. Now, what we're going to talk about in this video is the situation where you are co-parenting with somebody who's living outside of your house in a whole different place. So, for example, either you're in the process of a divorce and you and your spouse are living in separate places, or you're already divorced and you and your ex are living in separate spaces, or you were never married and you and your co-parent are in different spaces, or the bottom line is you're not living together, right? If you are in the process of getting a divorce with a spouse and you're living together and dealing with co-parenting, that has its own set of challenges. And maybe some of these tips will help you, but really what we're talking about is the situation where you and your spouse or ex are living in different places. You got to deal with what do you do with the kids. And before we talk about how you can deal with that and what you've got to think about, the first thing you have to understand is where your relationship with your ex or your spouse is right now. Now, if you were reasonably okay before this quarantine started and you can talk with each other, that's the best situation possible, because a lot of these things you'll be able to work out, hopefully, either on your own or maybe with the help of a mediator or a friend, right? So you're in the better situation. If you're in the situation where you can't talk to your spouse or talking doesn't get you anywhere, you've got a tougher road to hoe. But we'll talk about some things that you can do and things you might want to think about, right? So either way, it's going to be worth thinking about what you can do to help your situation. But in what way? I mean, what are the issues that you're facing now that you're in quarantine together? And they really fall into three categories. I mean, you may have more depending on your circumstances, but these three things are the most important, and they are time spent with your kids, health issues for you and your children and your ex, and money issues, right? That kind of covers everything. So let's talk about time first. What does that mean? Well, the co-parenting schedule that you had before the quarantine started may not work at all right now. I mean, your kids are home 24/7. They need to either go to school online or they need to be homeschooled, or maybe a little bit of both, right? And somebody's got to take care of your kids 24/7. Who's going to do that? If you're working from home and your ex or spouse is working from home, everything it just gets harder, right? Now, if one of you's not working from home, or if both of you aren't working from home, then you've got a different situation. But no matter what your situation, it's different now than it was. So you're going to have to make adjustments in your time schedule. Now, there's a lot of different creative ways that you can do that, but rather than me listing out a bunch of potential parenting plans, which may or may not be helpful for you, let me just suggest an approach. And this is the approach that you might find most helpful in negotiating anything. The time issues, the money issues, the health issues, no matter what they are, this approach will serve you well. And that is an approach, if you can talk with your spouse, if you can both focus on what you need, what everybody needs as a family, your needs and what is important, what you're interested in. So you're focusing on what matters to all of the players involved, right? If you can do that, rather than focusing just on the law or the rules or what is supposed to happen or anything else, if you just focus on, at least for now, what does everybody need and how can we get those needs met given our current constraints and our situation, you're going to be able to think more creatively and come up with solutions that will be better suited for your family. So for example, in the time situation, if you need to work from home, your ex or spouse needs to work from home, and the kids are home all day, if you focus on, okay, how can each of us find some time to get our jobs done and find time to be with the kids and find time to school the kids, homeschool the kids, or make sure that their needs are met, how do we do that? Focus on that, and you will have a better ability to make an agreement with your ex or your spouse that meets everybody's needs and works, right? That's what you want. So that's the approach, that's the time issue. What's the next issue? Health. And health means a lot of different things. It means, first of all, what health precautions are you and your ex and the kids going to take during this time of quarantine? Now, a lot of people unfortunately have some very different ideas about what you should or shouldn't do with your kids right now, right? If you and your ex or your spouse are on the same page, awesome, you got this nailed. But if you don't, if you, for example, if you think that your kids should strictly follow the CDC guidelines and do everything and wear gloves and not go on play dates and stay home and all do everything by exactly what they're supposed to do by the CDC rules, and your spouse or your ex is like, they're fine, they're healthy. If they want to have a play date, it's not going to, really, I think they're going to be okay. There's not that much coronavirus in our area. We're going to be fine. And meanwhile, you're like, it's making you crazy to even think about. What do you do with that situation? Well, first of all, you've got to look at what your facts and circumstances are. If your kids have an underlying health issue that would make them more susceptible to coronavirus or make coronavirus more lethal in them, for example, if they have asthma, right? Coronavirus is a disease that attacks your lungs. If they have asthma, that's probably not a good thing, right? So if that's your situation, then following the CDC guidelines is even more important, right? So you can try to reason with your spouse, you can try to negotiate with your spouse. If that gets you nowhere, your next line of defense might be to find a mediator or a friend who can help the two of you talk to each other and work this issue out. If that doesn't work, then you may want to give your lawyer a call. Now, the reality is that most courts right now are closed. However, they're all open for emergencies. But what you think is an emergency may be very different than what the judge thinks is an emergency. So what you've got to do is call a lawyer and just say, it's worth it to pay for a phone call to say, here's my situation. Is this something that the courts would consider right now, yes or no? And if the answer is yes, then that gives you another option if you want to go down that road. If they say no, then you're stuck managing this as best you can right now. So that's health issues for you and the kids. What happens, though, if somebody gets sick? And it may or may not be the coronavirus, it just might be sick, right? The best thing that you can do is negotiate what will happen now with your spouse or your ex before anybody is sick. Because when somebody is sick, everybody's stress level goes up. Whoever is sick doesn't feel good. That might be you, it might be your ex, it might be the kids, who knows? But if you can lay out a plan now, you're going to be prepared. And then if you find yourself in that situation, everybody's going to be better able to deal with it. Everybody's stress level is going to go down, and you're going to be really happy that you had the foresight to talk about that issue now. So if you haven't already laid this out with your spouse, do it now. That brings us to money. Now, the reality is a lot of people right now are not making money, or they've lost their jobs. If that's the boat that you or your ex or spouse find yourself in, what I encourage you to do right now is to look at this situation right now and see what you can do temporarily so that everyone's okay. And remember the goal, meet everybody's needs. If you can both be on that page, then you can work something out. Maybe that means paying or receiving less in child support right now. Maybe that means that, you make an agreement that says, okay, for the moment, this is how we're going to get the bills paid. Everybody scales back. If you can get your ex to do that, awesome. If you can, find a way to meet your needs, awesome. But what I encourage is that you work together if you can. It's only temporary. And don't be a jerk. I mean, look, if your ex can't pay the bills and then he or she gets sick on top of that, what are you going to do? You can't get blood from a turnip, right? So you don't want you might want your ex to suffer. That's a different discussion. But you want to make sure that everybody, to the extent possible, has food on the table, has the clothes on their back, has their needs met, has a safe place to stay. So if that means adjusting your financial reality a little bit, do what you've got to do. And remember, it only needs to be temporary. And again, if your ex is just being a jerk or not doing what he or she is supposed to do and not paying, and the first line of your first option at that point is to call your attorney again and say, here's the situation. Is there anything I can do in the court system right now? And you're going to get a yes or a no. If the answer is yes, okay, that gives you a choice. If the answer is no, then like it or not, and this is just common sense, you've got to figure this out. And it may suck that you have to figure it out on your own, but if you have kids to take care of especially, you just have to do what you've got to do. And maybe that means finding a way to get some online work right now for yourself. Maybe that means doing something different. Whatever it means, you've got to do. And yes, that sucks, but that's reality. And the sooner you wrap your head around it and start taking the necessary steps to make sure you and your kids are going to be okay, the better off you're going to be. Now, in the beginning of the video, we talked about if you were agreeing with your spouse, you could do all these things. What if you and your spouse just don't agree on anything, you don't see eye to eye? Or you have a spouse who's difficult or won't listen to you or is just going to do what he or she's going to do. What do you do then? Well, if you can, again, if your situation is bad enough or dire enough that the court will handle it, that gives you an option. But if it's not, you can go to a mediator. But if your spouse won't mediate, that ends that option. What do you do? And the answer is the best you can. And that sucks as an answer. As a professional who likes to help people solve their problems, it sucks for me to have to tell you that. But that's your reality. So you can either start to rely on yourself and be resourceful and figure out a way to manage as best you can, or not. Those are really your only choices. But remember one thing. Study after study after study after study has always shown that what hurts kids the most is conflict. Marital conflict. And that marital conflict can be family conflict even after you're divorced, right? So if you and your ex are fighting and you're putting the kids in the middle, that is the one thing that is guaranteed to hurt them. So if right now you've got to swallow your pride and do stuff you don't want to do, or suck it up and deal with your spouse's or your ex's irresponsibility, then that's what you have to do. If that keeps your kids in a calm environment, in a safe environment, and it keeps everything moving and going in the right direction for right now, then that's what you have to do. And the other thing that you can do, though, the one proactive thing you can do is write everything down. Because if there is an option later on, after all this is over, to take your ex to court or to demonstrate to the court how, what your ex was doing during this time, you're going to want to make sure you remember what happened and on what day it happened. So you're going to want to write down, keep a journal with the date and the time and whatever it is that happened or didn't happen, so that you can remember it in the future. Now, it's not a perfect solution, but it gives you something to do right now, and maybe it'll help in the future. And the last thing that I want to leave you with is that whatever is going on now isn't going to last forever. We are going to get through this. The coronavirus isn't going to keep us all locked down forever. It's just for now. So focus on what you can do right now to make your life and your kids' life better. And if you can get your ex or your spouse on board to help, awesome. But if you can't, do it anyway. Control what you can, make life as good as you can while this situation lasts. And once it's over, you're going to be through it and everything is going to work out. You'll have a better chance to deal with life and get back to normal then. So I hope you found something in this that you can use, that can help you, and that you can help you deal with your current situation. I wish you all the best, and I'll see you again in the next video. Bye for now.